Hello, during today's session, you are going to learn what is a for loop on Python. Also, you are going to understand how to implement its syntax. And finally, we're going to review some examples, which include the for loop on Python and others which include the for loop on Python plus other statements. Seeing this, let's start sharing the screen and let's go to the PyCharm. So as for you can see here, I have just started with a couple of lines, which include some fundamental concepts. And the same, it's because I really consider that it's really important to understand the theory before pass to the syntax or try to understand the exercises. Seeing this, let's go to the first line, which is the next question. How can we understand what is a for loop on Python? And for that, the answer will be that a for loop is used for iterating over a sequence. I consider that all this line is totally clear, but let's be more specific when we are talking about sequence. When we're talking about sequence for this for loop on Python, we're making just reference to any list, dictionary, string, set, or tuple. Now, saying this, let's go to the syntax. For this, we have for loop syntax. First of all, before start explaining the syntax, we're saying that we have this additional line. And this line is a prerequisite that we need to include before start working with our for loop definition syntax. So let's just review this. And the first prerequisite is just create one sequence. Now, remember, when we're talking about a sequence, we're creating one variable and we're assigning one value. In this case, that could become that sequence in one list, in one dictionary, in one string, set, or tuple. For this syntax, let's just keep that sequence as list type. And that list type contains 3 items, item 1, item 2, and item 3. Now, let's, after explain that, let's just continue and explain the for syntax. For the for loop syntax, we start with the for keyword, then we have to assign one variable. And that variable could be any other, different name, but I just select this because for me it makes sense that we're making reference to one variable. It's easier for me to explain to you what I want to do. So for variable var in, that means this other keyword, I'm specifying where are we pointing and where do we want to access in order to pass through every element from our sequence list. So for var in sequence 1, I want to, that means I finish with this colon and then I keep the indentation, loop body. And here is the action that I will perform during every iteration. Now, let's just try to clarify this with the next recap. First of all, remember the var, this variable, it's a variable that takes the value of the item inside the sequence on each iteration. That means for our first iteration, I'm calling to the for loop, I take this variable, then I said I want to go to this sequence 1 and I want to access. So I pointed, I went here, I came here, and then I go to my first element. This is the item 1. I took this item 1, and then I put on my var variable, and then I implement my loop body. This is the first iteration. Now, after that, I go for the next iteration, for the next loop. I go here to my variable, I initialize it, and then I specify where do I want to go. Well, I want to go to my sequence 1, and then I want to access, well, what's the next? Well, the next element is item 2. So I take, in this case, the second element, and then I put in my variable, and then I use on my loop body. Finally, I go to my third item. After run all these 4, came here and access here, I take this item 3, and then I put in my variable, and then I implement the loop body. And this is it. There is no more loops, no more for loops or iteration because I just have 1, 2, 3 items, and I have already covered the 1, 2, 3 item by passing every one during every iteration to my var and executing my loop body. The second recap, it's about the loop, about how does this continue. And the loop continues until we reach to the last item. It's what I have just already said, that when we came to the last item, this will be the last iteration that we are going to be performing for the loop. And this is just one sequence. Remember, it's included in one sequence. You are going to follow in the iteration element by element and executing what corresponds or is mentioned in our loop body. Other thing that is mentioned here is that we need to be careful with our indentation, and remember that indentation is not else than these blank spaces. So see this, let's just comment what we have already seen here. And let's pass to other section, which are the exercises. Let's go here and let's go here. Now let's go for the first exercise. For this, we are going to be working with a sequence, and I want that this sequence will be a string type. That means that I'm going to create my sequence, and then I'm going to assign one string, right? So that will be, sequence name will be bar equal to this string. And remember, the string is composed from a lot of letters, in this case, some spaces, one comma. So what I want to try to explain here is that the element 1 will be this T, element 2 will be, or item 2 will be this H, element 3 will be this I, element 4 will be this S, element 5 will be empty or this blank space, and so on. We're going to continue until pass or complete, or until we go through the whole string or the last letter. Once that we reach this last letter is when we are going to stop our iteration or loops. Now let's start with this example. We start with the for keyword for. We create one variable to store every element. For B in bar, in this sequence, I want to print B. That means I want to print the value that contained B, but remember, this is per every iteration, and that means per every element that came here, it's print here, then go to the next, came here, then go for the third, came here, and came here. Fourth, 5, 6, 8, etc. until R letter that came here, and then it's print here. So as per you can see here, we start with the T, we continue with the H, I, S, and so on until we reach to the last letter from this string or item, which will be the R letter. Okay, now let's continue with the next example. For this, we have the color sequence, and then we have assigned another string, the blue string, to that color sequence, right? So let's start for keyword C, because I thought it's really easy to consider this C for the point to make reference to this sequence, right? For C in color, then colon, print C. So what we're going to do is the same that we did above, but now with this shorter string. So for C in color, we go to color, then we took the first item B, we store in this, or we put in this C, and then we print it. First iteration, we have B. Then we run this for loop, we continue here, we pass here, L, we took L, we put on C, and we print here, we have L. Then we go with the U, we run it, we go, we take U, we put here, and we print it, U. And finally, we go with the E. We run it, we came here, we take the E, we put here, and we print E, right? This is the first example where we're working with strings. But now what happens if we work with a list? Well, in this case, let's use colors sequence with uppercase colors equal to as per I want to use a list, I'm going to use all these letters as one string, and then other string, and then other string. So my first item will be all these, second will be all these, and third will be all these letters, right? So let's start for keyword. C once more, because C makes reference to colors, because for me it's easy to remember. For C in colors, this is the sequence. We jump here, and when we access to the first element, we take all the first element, blue, we put here on C and we print it. We have blue. Then we go for the next, we run it, we access, we go for red. And then red came here, is put in this variable and printed, and we have red. And finally, we go for the third iteration because it's the third and last item. We go to the sequence, and the next is yellow. We take this item, we put in this variable, and we use it in our loop body. So we have yellow. Now let's continue with the break statement, and let's read about that. So this line says that the break statement is used to terminate the current loop and resumes execution at the next statement. Also, it says that the break statements can be used in while or for loops, but for this video, we are going to cover just the for loops interaction with this break statement, interacting with this break statement. So for this example, we are named as example 3, and we're going to use if and break. Now, let's go to the example just in order to clarify what we have already explained here. So the first thing that we have to do, remember, is to create our sequence. In this case, I'm using the name as my name sequence because that is going to contain a list of names. Peter, Charles, and Mary are the items that are going to be contained on my list that are going to be stored or contained in my name sequence. So starting the syntax, we said that we start with the for keyword, for n, once more n, because make reference to name, for n in name, then colon. If we start with interacting with the if condition, if n, if what is stored in n, it's equal to Mary, then we break the loop. That means when we find this name in our list, that means that we're breaking the code, the loop, so we're not going to continue doing anything. There is no more loops, nothing to execute. But if this is false, if there is not Mary, then we are going just to go for this object. We pass here as per this is false, then we just print the object, right? So let's just interact with this example so that we could confirm that everything is totally clear. So for n in name, so I just start my for loop, and then it says you need to go to name and access to the first element, which is Peter. Take Peter, put on n variable, and use that object, that n variable, for the next condition, for the next validation. If n, which is equal to Peter, if Peter is equal to Mary, well, it's not true, so just ignore it and just print it. So we have Peter. Now let's go for the next. Once more, we go for the next iteration, we run it, we go to the name, we access to Charles, and we take Charles and we put on this variable and we start to validate. If Charles is equal to Mary, no, that's false. So we just print Charles, we have here. And let's go finally for the third. So we have the third loop, we run it, we go name, we go Mary. We took Mary, we put on this variable, and we start to validate. If n, which is equal to Mary, it's equal to Mary, yeah, that's true, then just break it. That means just stop to continue working on that loop, break that loop, and just leave that things that you have already done. So that's why we are just leaving Peter and Charles, and we are not interacting or including or printing Mary. See, we have Peter and Charles. Now let's change, for example, to Charles. So remember, if we start from scratch, once more, we run it. We have for n in name, that's mean for Peter, we came here, Peter, here and here. So if Peter equals Charles, no, it's not, then print. So we have Peter, but the next says for n in name, we came here. The next is Charles. We take Charles, we put here in our variable. We use the validation if n, which is Charles, equals to Charles. Yeah, that's true. Then break it. So please don't continue, stop it or break the loop. So we have just Peter and nothing after that. And in the moment that Charles appears is going to be considered. So we have just Peter. Now let's continue with the next statement, which is actually continue. So let's read about it. The continue statement is used to stop the current iteration of the loop and continue with the next. So here we could find a little teeny difference with what we have already seen before, because the break just stops anything that is after we find the object, right? But with the difference with the continue is that when we find that object, we just jump that object. We don't interact with that object or item, and we continue with the next items. So let's just go to the example so that we could clarify what it has been already explained here. So for this example, for the for loop example number 5, we have that we will include the if statement and the continue statement. But in this case, remember, we are not going to break the loop. We are going to just jump the item that we don't want to include in our loop or iteration. So let's start. So as per you have seen, and as per I have explained on previous examples, we need to start with one prerequisite, which is our sequence, right? So we start defining our sequence and making or storing a list in our sequence. So that list contains, in this case, just 3 items. So those items are triangle, circle, square. Item 1, item 2, item 3. Now let's go for the for syntax. We have for keyword, for F. Once more, I just F because for me it's easy to remember. That makes reference to this figure name sequence name. So I have for F in figure. So let's go to figure and then go to triangle. Take triangle, which is the first element, put here on the F and start our validation. If F, which is triangle, equal to circle, well, it's false. In that case, just print F. So we have triangle. Now, second iteration for F in figure, configure, which is circle. We take circle, we put in this variable, this object. So if circle equal to circle, yeah, here that's true. So then continue. What's mean continue? Remember, we just ignoring this and we pass for the next. So we continue for the third iteration for F in figure. And remember, we came here and the next is square. We take square, we put here square and we pass here. So if square equal to circle is false, then we print F. And we have square here. Now let's try other. For example, let's go with triangle, which is the first item in my list. And let's run it. Let's go. Remember, this is once more from scratch the first iteration for F in figure. Let's go to figure, take triangle, pass triangle, and use triangle here and compare if triangle equal to triangle. Yeah, that's true. Then continue. That means you can continue, but don't consider triangle. Okay, don't consider triangle in this case. And let's go for the next iteration. We don't have triangle here, right? So we said for F in figure, let's go to figure. The next is circle. Take circle, put on this object is on this variable. If F, which is circle, equal to triangle is false, then print F. Then we print circle we have here. And finally, we have square. So we run it, we go here, we pass here, we take square, we put here, we use here. If square equal to triangle, well, in that case, it's false. Then we just skip that. And when we print F, which is square. So that's the reason why we have circle and triangle because we are ignoring. Sorry, we're having circle and square. That's because we are ignoring triangle. Remember, in this, we're saying you can run anything, which means that you are going to compare and you are going to print any value, which is not triangle. So circle and square are not triangle, and we have circle and square, right? Now, let's go for the past statement. And what the past statement said here is that the past statement is used in for loops when we don't want to keep empty. Sorry, when we want to keep empty the loop, but we don't want to generate an error. So that's mean, as per you remember, the syntax says that in order to use for loop syntax, we require to include one sequence, but also we have to include the for keyword, our variable in keyword sequence, colon, and then the loop body, right? But we don't have any loop body in this. Let's go here. In this example, we have for all these. We have our sequence, we have the for keyword, we have our variable, and we have the in keyword and the column, but we don't have the body here, right? So if we don't include that body, that means that we're going to generate one error because the for loop is not complete on its syntax, right? It's incomplete syntax. So due to the same, we have one trick, well, not trick, but we can use some kind of statement. In this case, is the pass statement that could catch that error or avoid to generate or display that error in our code. So let's just run it. And oh, sorry, I need to comment this. Let's just run it. And as per you can see here, we don't have, we have not assigned any body here, any block here to be executed, but we use the past statement. So that means that we're avoiding to getting an error because we're catching, right? But what happens if we remove that past? Let's see. As per you can see here, we're generating error because it's supposed that the code is expecting to complete, fulfill this space. So let's just keep pass once more, pass statement, run it, and everything is going to be work as per it was. Everything is properly working right now. Now let's go to the nested loop. Now for the nested loop, we can define in this line that a nested loop is a loop inside other loop. So what's mean that? That's mean that if we go for the 7 example, this is our last example. We're seeing one nested translation. That's mean that I want to combine two sequence or to 4 loops in order to generate all this output in my console in this screen, right? So let's just go part by part or section, and here we have 4. First of all, we define 2 segments, right? We have message, which is one string, one list that includes just the whole value, just one item. Then we have this Spanish sequence, which contain 1, 2, 3 items. That means that I'm going to combine this line with this item, this line with this item, or this item with this item. And for that, the syntax will be for the same for keyword variable, for this variable, aim once more because it makes reference in an easier way for aim in message. And then I continue for the other sequence, for S in Spanish sequence, right? What I want to do, well, in this case, will be something easy. Just print M, which is the first, followed by the second, which is S. Remember, this is the first and this is the second. So what I'm going to do is just pass this and then go to the next. So for this, I pass this and then go through this, and then I pass this and they go through this, and then I combine with this other. And let's just reconfirm that here. Here we have the Spanish number is uno, the Spanish number is dos, and the Spanish number is tres, right? So I think that this is it for today's session. I really consider that we have covered more than enough for this for loop explanation. Anyway, my suggestion, as any other video, is the same. Just try to give a double check to everything that we have already explained here. Try to create your personal notes, replicate every example that we have already performed in your application. If you have, for example, Sublime or PyCharm or any other application that you could use to recreate the examples, that could be great, because there you could start identifying any issue that you could face with the comments or with the upper sensitive case on the letters, or for example, with the indentation. I think that the most common error is going to be the indentation, because it's something that you take a little time to start getting familiar with. So this is it. If you have any questions, you can leave a message, and pretty thanks for your time until this last moment of the video, and all the best in your Python journey. See you on next videos.